Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us good morning, good afternoon, or potentially good evening. Thank you all for joining us here at this panel. My name is Karishma. I'm the production assistant, and I'm here to let you know that our panel is running slightly late. So please hang in there with us, and we will begin shortly in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. First, we sincerely apologize for starting a little bit late than planned. Thank you to our esteemed panelists and presenters for joining us. We sincerely appreciate your time, and we also thank you for willing to sharing your work with us. So today, for this session, we will be looking at migrant experiences from violence to transformation. And this particular session, we look at relevant issues, specifically from Dr. Diogo Andreola. We'll be looking at, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it very well. So we'll be looking at intersecting climate-related displacement and violence, experiences from El Salvador and Honduras. From Dr. Saleh Ahmed, we'll be looking at managing climate risk through transformation adaptation, critical insights from Bangladesh. Um, from um, from I can see Dr. Ludwig here, but I think he's supposed to be higher. But I will just keep okay from Miss Haya Bubel. I can't see your distance here, but I will just continue and would move from there. First, I want to say thank you again for this, and we will then move now to Dr. Diogo, who is currently a research analyst at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, where he works on the class projects, a socioeconomic vulnerability among urban migrants in Lake Victoria Basin and Great Lakes region. His research advances the understanding of and management of the interplay between the impacts of climate change and human mobility patterns. Thank you again for joining us, Dr. Diogo. The floor is yours. Just to also mention that we'll be having 15 minutes of presentations, and we'll have conversation after. Thank you so much, and over.
Thank you so much for your introduction remarks. Please just allow me to share my screen. Um, I think this is now shared. Can you see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
Um,
Yes.
Perfect. And then just one more detail. I just need to set up my timer here.
Diego, that should be
Perfect.
set up at this end as well, so you should be able to see it now.
Okay, yes, I can see it. Does it start automatically or?
Yes.
Perfect. So there we go. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be a part and participating in this panel today. My name is Diogo Seraglio. I'm a research analyst at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in Germany, and today also representing the South American Network for Environmental Migrations, RESAMA. Our presentation today is titled Intersecting Climate-Related Displacement and Violence Experiences from El Salvador and Honduras. And this was part of a collaboration between UNHCR Regional Bureau for the Americas and MOVLAN, the Latin American Observatory on Human Mobility, Climate Change, and Disaster, an initiative led by University for Peace in Costa Rica in partnership with Rizama. Our goal here today is to understand how climate change and disaster shape human mobility in the region and how these dynamics intersect with violence and insecurity. So this basically aligns with UNHCR strategic framework for climate action. And today, basically, I will focus on this interplay, climate change, human mobility, and violence in these two countries that are part of the dry corridor. We all know that sometimes human mobility is considered an adaptation strategy. Other times, it becomes the only option for households confronting threats to livelihood, safety, and also dignity. Um, so a key issue here is the degree of choice in these movements. And we basically examine how environmental stressors interact with other human mobility drivers, especially violence and insecurity, which remain widespread in both countries. So we consider whether climate impacts first contribute to violence and whether pre-existing violence limits the ability of people and institutions to prepare for or respond to climate risks. In this slide, we just a quick overview of our conceptual framework that help us to explain how climate change, mobility, and violence are connected. So at the structural level, we have climate stressors interacting with socioeconomic vulnerability and institutional capacity. These underlying conditions will determine whether a hazard becomes a crisis or not. Within this context, we have multiple interaction pathways. So first, we see that climate impacts can intensify resource competition and insecurity. Second, they can push people to move, either as an adaptation strategy or through displacement, a forced movement. Violence can also can itself lead to mobility, while also affecting how receiving areas cope with that. And migration can reduce risks and in some cases create new tensions. So all these processes, they will lead to different outcomes. So mobility, human mobility, and here I mean migration displacement can either enhance resilience or sometimes deepen marginalization. In Central America and across all these dimensions, sorry, we have governance, human rights protection, and also community agency influencing whether human mobility becomes a pathway to safety or exposes people to increase insecurity. With a specific regard to Central America, in El Salvador and Honduras, we all know that climate hazards are increasingly shaping human mobility, especially displacement following sudden onset events. Yet, or like similar to many other parts of the globe, human mobility in the region is also multi-causal, multi-causality. I'm sorry. We have like the multi-causality of factors leading to mobility patterns in these two countries. So violence and economic hardships often overshadow the environmental dimensions of the movement, even when climate impacts are significant. We see situations of environmental degradation reducing livelihoods, leading to further insecurity, eroding rights, reinforcing poverty and conflict. So these combined pressure will play a major role in prompting people to move. And on top of all this, violence undermines preparation and response capacities, restricting humanitarian access, weakening institution response, and also limiting safe, orderly migration as a form of adaptation. So to fully understand these mobility patterns in Central America, we must, on one hand, consider how environmental hazards and violence compound one another throughout the displacement cycle. So talking about our study or our field work, data and methods, this study combines secondary research and field work. So after having conducted a desk review, we also conducted interviews with individuals in communities of origin and destination in both countries. These communities were selected with UNHCR support based on exposure to climate hazards, level of violence, mobility patterns, and also protection concerns. Field work was conducted in 3 communities in each country, so 3 in Honduras and 3 in El Salvador, and in total, we conducted 204 interviews, 111 in Honduras and 93 in El Salvador, using a structured questionnaire. In the next slides, present a kind of an overview of some of the findings from the fieldwork conducted in these two countries. And these results highlight how communities are experiencing these combined pressures of climate change, disasters, and violence, and how these overlapping factors are shaping human mobility decisions or risk perceptions and adaptation strategies. So regarding perceptions of climate risks, we see that communities are living with a significant climate exposure, and this is perceived by them. Around 2/3 of the households affirmed that they had been affected by extreme weather events in recent years. Interestingly, they also identified slow onset changes. So they are very often referring to soil degradation, drought combined with desertification as reasons directly threatening livelihoods and access to water. Um, Despite this, climate-related mobility remains under-recognized. So very few respondents saw displacement or rising violence as a consequence of climate event. Environmental drivers are frequently overshadowed by more visible triggers such as poverty and insecurity. So these are like the main initial reasons pointed out. Adaptation measures remain limited, mainly because of the lack of resources, information, and even the lack of risk awareness we found. So we also notice from the data that most households, they will stay in place during imminent hazards. Relocation is rarely viewed as an option. However, when community preparedness structure exists, they are perceived in a positive way. They strengthen cooperation, enable assistance, and can reduce both displacement and violence. Further, when it comes to drivers of past and potential human mobility, um, respondents, and this is not new, respondents emphasized socioeconomic drivers such as employment, living conditions, and access to services as primary motivations. So these remain the most visible triggers for past and potential migration or even displacement. Um, as you can see, violence and insecurity also play a role, influencing like the decision to move directly. But environmental drivers are present but less visible, just like in different parts of the globe. So in Honduras, disasters and violence were cited at similar levels. And if you see in El Salvador, and my apologies that my figures are in Spanish and not in English, violence clearly dominates, and environmental risks are less acknowledged. Future intentions also vary. In Honduras, climate risks were identified as a factor for potential movement, while in El Salvador, economic motivations predominate, and many people are undecided or unwilling to move again. So we see that overall migration emerges as both as an adaptation strategy and a survival response, more strongly associated with climatic impacts in these two countries. In my next slide, here I wanted to bring some information on the intersections between climate risks and violence, or how climate risks and violence reinforce one another. And we see that respondents reported that disasters affect in a negative way employment, rights, and environment, which drives to poverty and food insecurity. And links between disasters and violence were much strongly perceived in Honduras, where like over 60% agreed that violence affects disaster response and increases after hazard. Also saying that disasters contribute to territorial or resources conflict. In El Salvador, recognition was a little bit lower, although a concern about violence remains widespread. So all that to say that violence restricts mobility or human mobility, and here like both migration and displacement, blocking access to shelters, to assistance, also to information. It prevents very often evacuation and return, and also increases exposure to criminal control during the displacement or the migration cycle, like during the movement, I mean. Um, in Honduras, respondents also highlighted violence against environmental and human rights defenders, which was very interesting, and that undermines resilience more broadly. Um, but more importantly, like these dynamics show as a kind of a vicious a cycle where we see like environmental risks generating insecurity, insecurity limiting adaptation, and then having the movement, the human mobility process, either like migration or displacement, leading like to further violence and instability. So understanding these relationships is always essential to designing safe mobility pathways as a policy implication. So just some key messages and concluding remarks from my side is that first, like in both countries, climate impacts are already shaping human mobility outcomes, but not always in a safe or adaptive way. Our sample show us or respondents here like continue to emphasize socioeconomic drivers and to a lesser extent security drivers, even though these are deeply linked to environmental degradation or to the impacts of climate change and disasters. So economic reasons cover environmental drivers, which appears like to be like more secondary. Most people stay in place despite risks, not because they feel safe, but because violence restrict restricts their ability to move or return. So as I was just saying, like these dynamics create a vicious cycle in which environmental risks will increase insecurity. Insecurity undermines adaptive, both adaptation and both safe migration or human mobility patterns, and eventually human mobility or migration or displacement will lead to new forms of violence. So it's like a kind of a cascading cycle when we analyze the climate change and human mobility nexus under the violence or security umbrella. And maybe breaking this cycle requires recognizing human mobility not only as a right, which is emerging within the inter-American system of human rights in the region, but also as a real form of adaptation strategy supported then by stronger protection systems, inclusive governance, disaster risk reduction, and so on. So I would say that's it from my side. You can find all the results. My aim here was just to give you like a kind of an overview of the study, which is available online, both in Spanish and a very good summary in English. You're very welcome to look at it. I think that I'm done. I thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward for your possible questions. And I hand over to you, Mr. Lukman.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Diego. Now, this is very beautiful. I really am very insightful. Very critical intersection that you have been able to show from your study. But quite a number of things struck out for me, and as I have quite a number of questions for you as a follow-up. But after all the presentation, I would actually ask them. But I also want to say that I find it very insightful for you, as you mentioned that majority of the people you engage do not really see environment as some of their core drivers. They still actually focus on socioeconomic realities and in some cases violence, right? And I also love that you mentioned that movements we should start advancing mobility as an adaptive strategy. So what we currently have right now is more reactive rather than preventive. So meaning that majority of existing efforts are not integrating mobility as some of the adaptation strategies. So I find it very insightful, and it's also aligned with what we are also trying to do at the GCCM high as well. No, this is good, but I have quite a number of questions as a follow-up. I think we can have that conversation after the this. Thank you again, Dr. Diogo, for this very beautiful body of work. Thank you. Um, Next, we would be actually listening to Dr. Saleh Ahmed, who would be speaking to us on managing climate risk through transformational adaptation, critical insights from Bangladesh. Dr. Saleh Ahmed is an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology at Michigan State University. As an interdisciplinary environmental scientist, Dr. Ahmed's research interest lies at the intersection of environment, development, and social justice. He received an interdisciplinary doctoral degree from in arid land resource sciences with a minor in global change from the University of Arizona. Thank you again, Dr. Ahmed, and over to you. You have 15 minutes.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lukman. I'm actually going to share my presentation, but I just like to tell you in advance. Just before starting this session, I was trying to share my screen with my presentation, and sort of like, Zoom was actually just kicking me out. If that actually happens, then I'll just come back, and I can actually sort of like share my presentations. It's just I would say preliminary research. We are still, me and my colleagues are still trying to understand the complexity, focusing on coastal Bangladesh. So it's mostly like conceptual. So even without presentation, I can actually explain the phenomena. But anyway, let me actually try to share the screen and see if that actually works or not.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Do you see my presentation now?
It's still coming up, at least from my end. Can anybody see it? It's saying you're still sharing.
Dr. Ahmed,
Okay.
I think you might have to stop sharing and reshare it just for the computer to catch up with what you're doing. Because it says that you started screen sharing, but we can't see the screen. So
yeah, no, actually in my
I think we've lost Dr. Ahmed.
Yes. So I think while we wait for him, we can take Dr. Ahia Bubel, if that's okay, if you're ready. Do you think you can go now? Okay.